Yeah, hello. Are you familiar with that case that I referenced?
I don't know. I wasn't told which case you were...
Oh, okay. I called, and my request was to speak with someone that was familiar with the Union Pharmacy closed by the DEA about 10 years ago. Union Pharmacy, Dubuque, Iowa. It's the biggest narcotics prescription bust in the history of the country. I thought maybe someone would remember that. It was the biggest pill bust, or I don't know how they worded it, more pills than any other in the history of our country. Union Family Farms, they got $14 million in revenue off of it. Over 1 million pills were illegally prescribed. I'm not familiar with the biggest case in the history of the country.
I believe that's the board pharmacy since last March.
Oh, okay. You don't follow the pharmacy bust, obviously. So here's my question. I'm the one that turned in that pharmacy. My name is Luke Green. I was the one that turned him in, and I took a lot of heat from Dubuque because they didn't want to believe it, or either they knew it and didn't want to believe it, or didn't want to bust them because they all had an inheritance share in there. And my question to you is, when you catch your job, you work for the pharmacy, right? I mean, you work for the board of pharmacy. Your job is to go in and shut down people that are corrupt, correct?
Well, it's not that simple. If there...
I mean, I gave you an open and shut case. It was pretty dang simple when I helped you. I mean, if you have proof and you prove to it, and I say, here's these 500 pill bottles that contain stuff that only doctors are allowed to have, I mean, how simple do you need it? I handed you an open and shut case. You went in, you investigated it, you realized I was telling the truth. You made tons of money off it.
No, I'm not familiar with this case.
No, I know you're not. That's why I'm telling you what I know as a fact, since I'm the one that shut them down.
Okay.
So I'm familiarizing you with facts. Okay, so my question is, if it was that simple, is that your job? Or, I mean, I know you run around and, you make sure that doctors are doing good and they're not screwing their patients when they're on anesthesia. I know all the facts of what you do. My question is, if you're not familiar with that case, do you know of anybody that is, or has everybody in the last 10 years been replaced in the pharmacy board? Are there people on the board for the last 10 years that are still there?
Issue that you have? I mean, what...
Yeah, I had some questions about the case because my question is, I have some really important questions, and if you're not familiar with the case, then your answer is going to be, well, Mr. Green, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, and that's why I'm trying to speak with someone with familiarization, or allow me to familiarize you with the facts.
Okay, well, one thing is that the legal documents are available on our website, so that's public information, and then if you have questions, the best person that you would want to speak to is your General.
You're who?
Assistant Attorney General.
And that's Assistant Attorney General of the United States, or Assistant Attorney General of the Pharmacy Board?
For the Pharmacy Board.
Okay. And what's the name of that person?
Her name is Laura Steffensmeyer.
Okay. Well, what I bet was let me just ask you the questions, and then you can kind of have an idea where I'm at and what I'm doing here, so you have an understanding what's going on. Is that okay? And then I know you're probably not going to have the answers, but I just want you to know what I'm thinking. So maybe you could say, hey, that guy's right. Why did it happen like this? And then you could say, maybe I'll look into it because I work for this place. I might have a heart and care. So would that be okay if I brought up these questions to you? And even though you don't have the answers, you might look into it yourself?
Sir, I apologize. I do, but I don't like the tone of voice and how you're speaking to me.
Oh, I'm not speaking in any negative manner, ma'am. I have total respect for you, but I do want you to understand this is important, just as important as the day I came in and told you guys a pharmacy selling drugs to underage kids, and it's killing kids right across from a school.
So this pharmacy no longer has a license in Iowa?
Well, it does under a new name. If you call your brother up and put it in his name, that's all you have to do to bypass that. Here's my question, ma'am. The biggest drug pharmacy, I don't know how to word it right, but it was like the biggest one in the United States. Somehow, if you word it right, the number of pills or something. So anyway, they busted them, and Mr. Green, you're right, they shut it down. They took all the doctors' licenses and said, look, you guys are doing illegal. You're kingpins. You're selling drugs illegally on the internet. You know that. You've heard of pharmacies getting busted for selling drugs on the internet, correct? Is that true?
I can't speak to that. No.
You don't know if the doctors sell drugs on the internet illegally.
You need to speak with our Assistant Attorney General.
I know, but I just wanted to tell you where I'm coming from so you would understand my point, and then maybe you could say, hey, this guy's got a good point. Let me look into this for him or for...
I'm not going to be able to assist you, and so you need to speak with Laura regarding this case.
So you don't even know my question. You're telling me you can't help me. You don't even know what question I'm going to ask you, and you tell me I can't help you. Is that what you're saying, ma'am? Because I am recording this call, and I will post it on YouTube.
Okay. I understand that,
and your answer is I can't help you even though I don't know the question? That's your answer? Is that what you're telling me, ma'am?
For you to Laura. Thank you. Hold on.
Okay, okay.
You have reached the Office of the Attorney General of Iowa and the Consumer Protection Division. Our call staff is assisting other callers. Please stay on the line, and we'll answer your call in the order we received it. Your current place in line is number 1.
Thank you.
Attorney General's office. This is Colleen.
Hi, Colleen. Are you in the same office, same building with the pharmacy board?
No.
Oh, you're not?
Pharmacy board is with Iowa Public Health.
Okay, and you're like literally the Attorney General's assistant, correct? For Iowa Attorney General's assistant, correct?
This is the Iowa Attorney General's office.
Okay, I got a question for you.
We have investigators. We have all kinds of people. Yes.
Oh, okay, good deal, good deal. I really didn't want to speak with you. I actually just called. I mean, I do now that they made me come to you. But I just called the pharmacy board, and I said, ma'am, I have some questions I'd like to, explain some stuff to you and ask you some questions. I said, I told them about 10 years ago, I gave you a open and shut case to Dubuque Union Family Pharmacy, the biggest the biggest bust in the United States related to pharmaceuticals online. And I said, I'd like to ask you a few questions now that I see how you guys played your cards once I gave you that case. And I said, I know that since you're not familiar with the case, because she said, I'm not familiar with that case. I said, I know you're obviously not going to be able to give me the answers, but maybe by knowing what my questions are, you could use that information to your advantage and look into it yourself if, you're working for the Board of Pharmacy to help people. And so she said, well, sir, I'm not going to be able to help you. I said, ma'am, I haven't even asked you a question yet. Could you just allow me to ask you the question first? No, you need to speak with the Attorney General. And I'm like, well, it doesn't deal with the Attorney General. It deals with the pharmacy board.
We represent all of the state agencies, so
oh, do you?
That's why she said that.
Okay. Well, here's my question, ma'am. About 10 years ago, my name is Luke Green. About 10 years ago, I went into the Dubuque, Iowa Police Department, and I said, look, I have proof that this pharmacy on Central Avenue, right across from Fulton Elementary School, are selling drugs illegally out the back door, and I have bottles to prove it. And I said, I have witnesses, I have recordings, I have everything I need. And I even met up with the owner, Jack Husel, and I said, look, you guys are doing a really bad thing here. You're selling dope, and you're a doctor. And well, they didn't like that at all. Well, Dubuque said, no, that's impossible. All of our police go there. Our law enforcement, our union through that pharmacy. We know better than that. Mr. Green, get out of here. Wouldn't even hear me out, so I had to go outside the state and go like the Illinois FBI and tell them to get the attention that, it deserves. So they came in and investigated. I'll be darned, Mr. Green was right. They busted about over, 14 million pills were slipping around, little kids using mom and dad's credit card, buying narcotics, all kinds of stuff. Little kids playing across the street in the school yard right straight across from there. So 10 years passed after I busted them. Officer John Digman was head of the narcotics in Dubuque, Iowa at the time. He's now Lieutenant John Digman of traffic in Dubuque, Iowa. And he was the main guy I dealt with. And so basically I've sat there and I watched it for 10 years. And my question is, they got millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars from that, right? And from all the money that they confiscated. And my question was, the head kingpin of this pharmacy, Union Pharmacy, Dr. Jack Husel, who eventually had a heart attack because he knew he was going to go to prison, died, which is a good place for him. But all the other doctors and pharmacists in there, basically, to be honest with you, ma'am, they didn't get one day in jail combined. They didn't do a day in jail when they got arrested. They didn't do a day in jail when they were convicted. Every single doctor in that pharmacy to this date has not done a day in jail. They use the illegal narcotic proceeds to pay their way out of these charges. And I mean, I'm really disappointed in the state of Iowa for allowing that. How can you allow drug kingpins to walk free? And none of them go to jail. I mean, doctors, it was a worldwide thing. It was all the way to Bahamas. Pharmacom, if you ever heard of Pharmacom or BioLC, these big corporations, everybody walked. The only people that went to jail were people on the other side of the world that were at the very bottom of the ladder. And I just can't believe that. And then number two, all these millions of dollars for law enforcement. I think Dubuque, Iowa got like $4 million, and Des Moines got like $14 million, whatever. Not one penny of that money was spent on rehabilitation for people. None of it was spent on a methadone clinic. None of it. Dubuque to this day does not have a methadone clinic in that town, and they have a pill problem like you wouldn't believe. You know, and I live in Georgia, and I'm just ashamed and in shock that I even wasted my time trying to help people like that. I mean, how do you speak to that? How do you explain how none of these doctors went to jail since you're the Attorney General? What would your opinion be? I don't know, or I mean, what would you think?
Well, I would go ahead and file a complaint against board, the pharmacy board.
Against the pharmacy board?
With the ombudsman office.
With who?
They take any complaints against the state.
Let me write that down. What's the name of that place? O-M. B-U-D-S. Ombuds.
M-A-N.
O-M-B-U-D-S-M-A-N. Ombudsman.
O-M-B-U-D-S-M-A-N.
What in the world? Where did that come from? What's that about?
It's a state agency, and anytime you have a problem with a state agency, you can go to them and file a complaint.
Okay. Do they actually do anything, or I mean, is it just the only hope we have?
Yeah, they definitely do.
Really? Okay.
Also, after you do that, and if you don't feel fulfilled, maybe you can talk to one of our attorney generals about that.
I mean, they signed off on the case. You know what I mean? I'm not being ignorant, but your attorney general signed off on the Justice Department. People signed off on it.
So we have, we have a lot of people that, have changed jobs and retired and stuff.
Okay.
They
Wow.
know about that. So, if you point it out to the ombudsman's office and maybe file your complaint with them and just suggest everything that you just suggested on paper.
Put a new pharmacy board in place is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and then the ombudsman's office will contact our office and discuss it with us.
Okay. And do you have any, I mean, do you see where I'm coming from? We could have used that money to help people?
Yeah, and, of course, yes. And I truly agree.
Thank you.
Because,
Yeah, I'm just in shock.
you need to start at the ombudsman's office and file the complaint against the pharmacy board.
And because of what I did for the state of Iowa, instead of honoring me or just letting me be the unsung hero, they ended up destroying my life. They took custody of my daughter on false domestic, knowing that the woman was lying. My mother was involved, which I know that sounds insane, but this is America. My mother was involved. She stood there and watched everything happen. And then when it come time, we're at Happy Joe's. I was taking my six-year-old birthday party there, and that my ex, of course they're all welcome, and I had custody. I didn't have court custody, but I had physical custody of my daughter. And then I turned around, my ex grabs my daughter, runs out the door and drives away. And then all of a sudden the police show up and say, well, she said you pushed her or something. And I'm like, I didn't even get a chance to get up and do anything. I was like, Mom, you need to tell the police that she's got a witness and I don't. And if you don't tell them, they're going to put me in jail. Well, they ruined my life. They put a 14-year restraining order on my daughter.
That is in the past.
That's in the past, but this is because of what I did to them in that pharmacy. This is their way of getting me back. See, they couldn't.
Exactly. But you need to explain about what you feel that the pharmacy board didn't do, right?
Okay.
Not what your story is, because your story is an individual, private attorney matter.
I know, and the statutes right here. I filed a.
Did that commit? And if you combined with that, they're going to say, "Oh, this is just a private attorney matter."
Right. And I filed. See, now this has been. I had to leave.
How they should have used the money.
Okay. And I had to leave the state.
Okay.
It's been 10 years. I filed motion to quash 4 times with